All right, good morning, guys. Today we're going to be talking about PR under the radar. So let's start with defining PR. As we all have memorized and read in all of our classes, public relations is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. The key here is mutually beneficial relationships. We all have this idea of how to build relationships. As professionals, pre-professionals, and people in general, there's an idea that talking is the main point of building relationships. Most people will say that's in-person type of talking. You go to topics that are relatable, universal, likable. You want to build those relationships by talking to people on ideas that make sense to them. But what looks different when it's controversial? Does PR look different? Does how we communicate look different? Do the relationships look different? Let's take a look. One of these industries that might look a little different is the gun industry. You guys all had a reaction to that. I saw a couple smirks, a couple little yikes type of faces. People have reactions to guns, whether this is that they approve of it, that you enjoy going out and shooting, or that it's you disapprove of it. There's always a reaction. It's a hot topic. We all know that it's in the news today. We're looking at tighter gun laws, and what people are saying is who can buy guns, what's the time period between when you buy the gun and when you actually have possession of it, and why aren't we having tighter background checks? Both sides have lots of opinions, and we know that this can get really controversial as we're fighting for what we believe. I don't want to focus on it, but I don't want to skip over it, as it's really heavy on our hearts right now, as the Borderline Bar and Grill shooting happened a couple days ago, about an hour and a half north of here. I know a lot of people have been to the area. I have actually been to this place. It was really heavy on my heart as we knew some people at the place, but I wanted to talk about how this sparks a conversation. Right now, obviously a lot of things are going on with this, but while I want to talk about it, we're not focusing on it today in the presentation, as we are focusing more on the industry in light of hunting. But first, I want to talk about what the media covered and when to stop in these types of situations. Did you guys all watch the news of what happened? So you know it's pretty informative. They were giving out the facts. I didn't see a lot of opinions the first day when everyone was settling into what was happening, but they were quickly taken over by the fires that started in both Northern California and down here in Malibu. So what does that look like? Was the media right to stop covering the shooting and switch the fires? Does that happen on our part? Are we supposed to be a part of deciding when to stop? I think in a sense that PR professionals in this industry should continue the conversation about gun laws, especially in light of what's been happening, and we want to keep that conversation at ease. Should the media have covered both situations? In a sense, yes, but how do we decide what to cover and what not to cover? You probably saw Thursday around 3 is when the fire started to really start going. So what slipped through the cracks? We didn't really see the motive, which came out yesterday, that he did have some Instagram post, but we really don't know what happened there, but that was skipped over with the fire spreading yesterday. And then unfortunately, some of the names of the victims were also slipped through the cracks as fire started to take over. If you were following the news, a lot of people were upset with this. Understandable, lots has happened. So in this case, what has been looking different? The media decided what to do, and that's pretty much what we can go from right now. But I want to look different of what PR looks different in the gun industry in light of hunting. There's safety and fear in this, and that relates to the spiral of science theory. As we learned in PR leadership, this is a fear of speaking up to those who disagree. In an industry that is so controversial, as a PR professional in this, there's a fear of people ragging on your ideas. There's a fear of you being threatened yourself just by being in the industry. We also relate to practices in PR and media relations, such as the integration of the intersection of notary. We want the media to understand what's happening. We don't want them to get the wrong idea of the industry, as there's a lot to talk about. There's also a great idea of following up. This relates to transparency, and we want to keep this under the radar, pretty much, of allowing the coverage to only come from us and not from uninformed opinions from the publics. There's also PRSA values relating to advocacy, as we are the advocates for the industry. disclosure of information. This relates specifically to our publics and safeguarding confidences, as we don't want information that doesn't need to get out to get out. There's some cases where publics, families don't agree with what they're doing, and we want to keep their information and identity safe if there's any type of issue. There's also restrictions. So like I said earlier, talking in person is a big part of building relationships. But what happens when people don't come in? Most big gun corporations don't have people come into their offices. If they're selling the product, then obviously yes, but in most cases, no. And that's to avoid a lot of protests or any issues with people coming and having lots of great conversations. We also have other situations where we can't post certain pictures of people. This is for the employees and for the publics to keep them safe. As most of you probably know, the culture of the gun industry is a very interesting one. There are select publics, but within those primary publics, we have a lot of secondary publics that still tend to kind of differ, and they have their own opinions and own restrictions for themselves. So you get into a lot of discussions with that as well. Also, as someone in the gun industry, we are looking at creating a new look on guns. There's a lot of miscommunication on what happens here, and as for rifles are different than our ARs that we've been seeing in these shootings. So there's a sense of trying to communicate that so people understand that hunting is very different from what's been happening. So my experience, why this is important to me and how this affects me. I currently run social media for a company that makes custom turrets for gun scopes to help hunters in their precise shooting. Trying to figure out what to post has been a little bit difficult, but here are a few examples of what I've been doing. So this is one of our turrets. We do have a lot of different ones, but if you guys have probably seen in most cases where companies are selling a product, they're showing people with their product. You want a face to the name of the company, but in some cases you can't do that. So our main focus is to post the product, which changes a little the idea of PR. Are we leaning more towards marketing? Are we building those relationships by showing them the product? What's happening there? We also focus on the customers, and we don't want to show their faces, like I said. So in most cases, you see the animal rather than the person with their gun and the animal. People will give out their names and their location, but that is still a little on edge. Last, if you guys would know me, you would know this is my face, but if you didn't, you probably wouldn't be able to make out who that is. So in this case, it was National Shooting Month in August. We wanted to support the industry and that company there, but didn't want to upset our employees or the public, so keeping the side view was a good way to do that. I want to go more over media relations in the future. So like I said, we really want to build relationships with the media to allow for questions and understanding. This is the biggest part of the gun industry. There's interactions that might look different, like I said, as we're over the phone and email. We're not in person. So what do we do there? And then also handling what they release. It's looking at what to release, who to release it to, how to do it, and what time to do it. Also social media, like I said, there's some restrictions, but we want to continue the conversation of the industry and the people in it. So biblical interpretation. How do you apply PR in the gun industry to the Bible? Great question. I just want to talk about 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2, which states, "Moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found trustworthy." We are called to be good stewards, and in this sense, it's how we use our guns. Are we being transparent? Are we trustworthy with what's being used? It's how we portray the industry. Transparency again, are we open to having those conversations that people are afraid of? Are we opening to answer questions that are really controversial? Also, as Christians, we are held to a higher standard. It's creating a safe environment and atmosphere to talk, and it's not bashing others. So that's PR under the radar for the gun industry. I'd like to open the floor for questions.